nauseous. No, I'm not. I'm actually nauseous.
And then right behind you over there we have our Stanford Stadium. It's pretty close to being brand new. And I don't know if any of you guys are football fans, but actually later tonight Stanford is playing in the Orange Bowl against Virginia Tech. And this is the best season that Stanford has had, I don't know, basically since I've been alive. So we're really excited. All of the Stanford students out here are going to be supporting their fellow classmates and whatnot playing later on tonight. I know a lot of people actually flew out to Miami to watch the game. And one of the perks about being a Stanford student here is that going to athletic games, football games, all of our men's basketball, things like that are completely free. I mean, included in the price of tuition. But it's not out of the student's pocket, which is fantastic. Right over here we have our gym facilities. So basically any type of equipment you would need, ellipticals, there's even a climbing wall, basketball courts, things like that are all over here. Again, free of charge for the student. So now I'm going to quiz you guys. Does anyone know what the full name of Stanford University is? Yes, you got it. So it's Leland Stanford Junior University. He was named after Leland Stanford and James Stanford's only son, Leland Stanford Jr. And to give you guys kind of a brief history about the forming of Stanford University, Leland and James Stanford were married up in Wisconsin, where Leland Stanford had his law offices. However, one day his law offices burned down in a brief chemical fire, so he decided to move out west, try his hand at a new set of businesses, and he actually opened up a general store. He did so well for himself that he became one of the primary investors on the Central Pacific Railway, and he was the one who nailed in the golden spike connecting the whole entire transcontinental railroad. It's normally the golden spike is on exhibit back in our art museum called the Cantor Arts Museum. If any of you guys want to see that later. So, in addition to being extremely important in the economic sector, Leland Stanford was actually the first Republican governor and senator of California. So I guess he was kind of a big head honcho back in the 1800s. However, his pride and joy was his one and only son, Leland Stanford Jr. They would take him on international vacations. He had his own train set to play on in his backyard. He was kind of living the golden life. However, at age 15, they took him to Turkey where he caught typhoid fever and actually died. So they decided, Leland and Jane Stanford decided to come back to America and erect a monument to his life so that generations and generations to come would remember the name of Leland Stanford Jr. They decided to do that in the form of building a university out here on the West Coast that rivaled the East Coast in terms of, academics and whatnot. So Leland Stanford actually met up with some of the provosts of, those big schools on the East Coast that we don't, mention here on Stanford campus. And they said that an endowment of about $5 million would be good enough to start a pretty good-sized university out here on the West Coast. That wasn't good enough for Leland Stanford. He actually gave the university $20 million, and he bought this campus of 8,200 acres. To give you guys a little bit of a better perspective on how big this campus really is, does anyone want to make a guess of how many Berkeley universities we can fit here on our campus? Anyone, just throw out a number. 4, 10, no one else? Well, it's actually, if you multiply those two together, it's around 40.8 Berkeleys can fit on Stanford campus. So, and around 42.6 Harvard universities can fit all the way on Stanford campus. So we have an absolutely huge campus. On October 1, 1891, with 5 founding tenants. We have a running joke that 4 of them are now true, and you guys have to guess which one isn't. It's pretty easy. My caveat is when I come to the end. The first one is that the 8,200 acres were never allowed to be sold to any other, companies besides the university. Number 2 is that any student can come to Stanford University disregarding their background. There would be no discrimination, things like that. Number 3 is that women and men were able to attend Stanford University from day one, which was actually pretty revolutionary back in the time because most universities on the East Coast opened up men only, and then they added women later on in their years. Number 4 is that Stanford University is non-sectarian, which means that we're not religiously affiliated in any way. And number 5 was way back when Stanford University was tuition free. I'm guessing you guys know which one is no longer true. It's the 5th one. Stanford is no longer tuition free. Actually, in 1920, they imposed a fee of about $45 a year. Since then, it has gone up in price. However, I guess this segues into a really nice subject of financial aid. Stanford University has one of the best financial aid programs in the whole entire world. About 80% of our students are on some sort of financial aid, whether it be directly loans from the university, grants, things like that, or help from the federal government. So even though the number may look really huge, there are ways to get around it, and it really shouldn't dissuade anyone from applying to Stanford because almost no one pays that whole entire huge sum. So does anyone have any questions right now? History, things like that?